Well, I started off playing in bands. I grew up in a very cultish church, which is weird. Sort of ended up on stage in various manners, and then was in a heavy metal band, screaming and running around like a clown. And I found that in a heavy metal band, you've got to manage 5 idiots, whereas I've only got to manage one now. So it was actually after I had a nervous breakdown and I went to see my favourite comedian, Steve Hughes, and I sort of, at that point, I couldn't even go into shopping centres. And I'm like, I'm going to try that one day, just to prove that I wasn't ruined as a person. It was, if I can do that, then I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I've been doing it 8 years, and I love it.
First time on the stage, though, was it a bit scary?
Yeah. It's always a bit scary.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be a bit abnormal to want to do it. Because if you say to most people, would you want to do it? They're like, hell no. I can't think of anything worse. Whereas I'm more uncomfortable being in the venue before and afterwards.
So you're part of the North Australia Festival of Arts in Townsville this week, and it's called Bipolar Rock Rolla. Can you tell me about the show?
It's the only show that I've done where I've had people come up to me and say it was hilarious and they loved it and they also cried. So I talk about when my friend I had to turn him in for a murder. It was a very heavy event in my life, and my whole life fell apart after that. But there's nothing funny about that story, but there is a lot of funny in my journey going through the mental health system and some of the characters I met along the way in there. For me, it's kind of cathartic, but it's got an uplifting message, I think, because through all that, here I am talking to you on the radio.
You're obviously very candid in what you share with the audience.
Yeah.
Is that difficult to put a show together and sharing all these experiences?
I think the hardest part was making the funny, because when you go through something like that, you have to talk about it to therapists, you have to talk about it to police, you have to talk about it on the stand at a trial. I've had to talk about it so much that I think my flaw, if anything, is being too open and too honest. And it does hurt people's feelings, especially other comedians, when they say, "How was my set?" I was like, "Do you really want me to tell you?" But it's been a challenge because I want to tell the story. I want to get the message out there that recovery is possible, whether that's recovery from drug addiction, whether it's recovery from depression, abuse, whatever it is, that you can come out the other side and be a better version of yourself.
Was that the main reason for doing a show like this? Because, as I said, you are quite candid in sharing some of your experiences with mental health. You share, obviously, about your friend, and that's obviously a big deal. But why was it so important to put together and get that message out there, do you think?
I don't know. So many people, especially in Australia, we're still a bit closed off. I guess I notice it with men, but it's very much a, yeah, I'm right sort of attitude. And a lot of the time, if someone says, "How are you going?" I'll always say, "Yeah, good." And with a few of my friends, I'll say, "Look, do you want the Australian answer or the honest answer?" And they'll say, "Well, be honest." I said, "Look, we're watching a band right now. We'll catch up another time and I'll tell you." For me, it wasn't that. It was having someone did something stupid. He took someone's life. He wanted to end their life. It was even the homicide detective said to me, "Normally we're all high-fiving when we catch someone for one of these crimes, but nobody wins in this." So it's a very interesting and weird tale that I had nothing to do with. I wasn't even in the state, but because he told me what he'd done and I had to act on it, all of a sudden I'm in the mix. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I'm trying to live my life. It's not a turn of events that I thought would ever happen. But I wouldn't be a comedian if not for that. I wouldn't. I've developed so much as a person because of it.
Are you still friends?
Yeah,
Don't mind me asking?
Yeah. He rings me and it's always weird. Obviously, this call is coming from the something correctional facility. It's like, okay. And it's always really emotional. It's really tough because no one wants to be don't dog your mates is the Australian credo. When you have to ring your friend with the police standing around you recording it, you don't feel like the best friend. But it was only a month or so ago where I spoke to him and I said, "You know what, I've actually been able to let that guilt go and I feel good about it." And he said, "You should let it go. I did it. It's, and his mum loves me. The only person that was mad at me was me. And it took me 10 years to stop being mad at myself."
Have you told him about the show?
No.
No.
Not yet. No, I haven't, just because this happened in 2010. And up until last year, I was still struggling. In fact, last year I spent 17 weeks in psych hospitals. And I was actually leaving the psych hospital to go and do comedy gigs. and then I would go back that night. And people were like, is what you're talking about on stage true? And I said, well, it is. The only thing that's not true is that I haven't actually left the hospital. I have to go back there now before they lock the doors.
Is the show Bipolar Rock Rolla, is it almost a way of healing for you as well?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a way of connecting, I think, because you don't want to write people off just because they've had struggles. So I just want to talk about it normally, and because it is. And a lot of the time people will ask me questions that they're uncomfortable talking to people about. Even random people that just follow my social media and stuff will hit me up because they know I'm not going to judge them because on paper I'm crazier than they are.
Should we be comfortable enough in 2022 to be having these open and honest conversations?
Yeah, we should. And I don't think it's a red flag if you've addressed it or you're addressing it. It's the denial. So I think the red flag is the lack of attention. If someone's got dramas and they say, hey, I'm bipolar, or hey, I've got schizophrenia, but I see my doctor, it's under control, or I really work hard at it, that's great. You're making the right moves.
How do you think shows like yours help to, I guess, break down that stigma?
I like the fact that I can make jokes about things that are painful. I'm just having a laugh with people. I'm not pointing the finger at anybody else. The most of the shows pointed at my own follies and mistakes. You know, I say some pretty outlandish things in my show. I talk about topics maybe you're not supposed to talk about sometimes, but it's all in fun. It's all in love, and we're just there to have a good time. Even though the topics in some of the songs are a bit hairy too, you can't knock it. My mum brought a bunch of her friends to one of my shows recently and they loved it, and they are not my demographic.
So it's got mum's tick of approval, but it's not, we wouldn't classify it as a musical as sense because it's a bit of hip hop, it's a bit of rock, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It's weird. It's very, it's bipolar.